would love to introduce our presenters today. My name is Ashley Goldsmith, and I am the Outreach Coordinator for the McMullen Area Groundwater Sustainability Agency, or MAGSA. And I would love to turn it over to the other two to introduce themselves.
I'm Crystal Tufenction, and I'm the Deputy General Manager for MAGSA.
Good morning. My name is Michael Kazi. I'm a soil conservationist at the Fresno NRCS field office.
All right, so you're going to be hearing a lot more from Michael in a couple minutes, but I'd like to now turn it over to Crystal to give an overview of MAGSA and what everybody has come here to learn more about.
Thank you, Ashley. I'm ready for the next slide. I'm sure most of you are familiar with McMullen Area Groundwater Sustainability Agency, but I'll just quickly highlight who we are. The Sustainable Groundwater Management Act required that GSAs are formed throughout the valley to deal with groundwater sustainability. We are one of those that was formed in 2017. We are a groundwater only GSA, which means our work that we have to do to accomplish groundwater sustainability is a lot more difficult, but we're up to the task. We have about 3/4 of the overdraft for the Keene Sub-Basin. We're one of the 7 that are working on groundwater sustainability within the Keene Sub-Basin. And we have a 5-member board that represents various interests within our service area. Next slide, please. So MAGSA was able to secure a $5 million funding pool for our landowners specifically. It is for 5 years. We're in the 4th year right now. It is a grant through the USDA Water Smart Initiative, their EQIP program, and we have our partners that we've been working with for the last almost 4 years now, Natural Resource Conservation Service. So they've been a great partner on this funding opportunity for our landowners. Next slide. And it is an opportunity for you. It's an opportunity to get funding to do some put in some irrigation equipment, some ways to increase your irrigation efficiency. And this is important because that is just one of the ways we're going to get to groundwater sustainability. When we can decrease the extraction of groundwater through your efficient irrigation practices, we're moving the needle toward groundwater sustainability. Next slide. Okay, so I am just going to, this is a quick highlight that what it takes to get this funding. You're going to have to be enrolled in the Farm Service Agency, and you're going to have to complete your application by mid-November. And Michael is going to now go into all the details of how you can accomplish that.
All right, so the first step is to make sure that we enroll in the FSA. And so to be eligible to receive funding with NRCS, you must register with FSA, and this has 2 components to it. You must register all of your land with FSA, and you must complete all of the eligibility paperwork with FSA. So the best way to enroll with FSA is to contact them. We do have a point of contact who is an NRCS liaison with FSA, and that is Joanne Bugarin. Here's your email at the top. Teresa is the manager for the Fresno FSA office. There's her email as well. I would highly recommend reaching out to Joanne, as she is the one who will be setting up an appointment with you and corresponding with you directly. You can also call the office at the number below and request to speak with Joanne about signing up for NRCS, or excuse me, getting enrolled with FSA to sign up for NRCS Water Smart program. So what they're going to request will likely include some form of identity, some form or documents of land ownership. So this typically means a deed, a lease, or a current property tax bill, as well as if you own an entity or part of an entity, the documents that show how the entity is constructed and who owns what percentage, and who has signature authority. Next slide. All right, and so FSA is on an appointment basis only. So please call to set up an appointment. Please don't just walk in. on any given day, please call to set up an appointment or email and set up an appointment, and please come ready. You can ask them what documents you'll need to make sure that you're enrolled properly, and they'll let you know what documents you're going to need. This is the address for the FSA office. They are on the other side of the NRCS office. And again, this is the email for Joanne, who is the liaison for NRCS, as well as she works in FSA. Okay, so this is the, now I'll be reviewing the WaterSmart application process with NRCS. All right, so this is part of our broader EQIP program. EQIP stands for Environmental Quality Incentives Program. Essentially, we are providing financial incentives for growers to implement conservation practices on their land. And so this is done based on addressing resource concerns. Those resource concerns are soil, water, air, plants, energy, and humans. In particular, for this WaterSmart program, we're really focused on water conservation as well as a little bit of soil conservation as well, but mostly the practices are focused on water conservation. We also offer technical advice and guidance as well, especially with engineering. And essentially, this is a reimbursement program, or rather a cost share program. So if you are selected for funding, you would purchase all the materials, equipment, and labor upfront. We would make sure that it meets our standards, and then we would reimburse you a cost share of that, and that cost share is fixed. It's not based on a percentage. It is fixed based on prices for every year. And next slide. And so here are some potential practices that fall within the WaterSmart grant for MAGSA. There are new or replacement irrigation systems, whether this is micro irrigation or drip irrigation. If your drip is over 15 years old, you could potentially qualify to get that replaced. Pipelines to connect to any surface water, or if you have faulty pipelines in your field. Flow meters are a big one. I know MAGSA has specific requirements on flow meters with telemetry, so we help get those funded, as well as soil moisture sensors with telemetry, and some irrigation pumps such as VFDs or booster pumps as well. We do not fund pumps for wells. And so here's an overview of the application process. Again, first and foremost, you must be registered with FSA. Your land must be registered, and you must complete the eligibility documents. Then you're going to give us a call. This is the office number. Any one of the soil conservationists here will be able to assist you. And then you're going to complete the application packet. This includes the application itself. We have a new application this year. The AGI form, we don't yet have that form, but we're hoping to get it soon. When we do receive it, we'll have you fill that out at the appropriate time. Direct deposit form, we need to know where to send the money if you are selected for funding. So we'll have you complete that. And then the irrigation history form, essentially we need to know that the land that you intend to put these conservation practices has been in production for at least 2 of the last 5 years. Unfortunately, we cannot put any water conservation practices on land that has been fallow for more than 2 out of the last 5 years. And so again, highly recommend setting up an appointment with NRCS as well. Once we complete this application packet, we'll set up a site visit. Then we'll create your plan. We'll do the ranking, assessment, and submit your application for funding. And we'll be making selections for funding on March 15, 2025. So that means you will know if you were selected for funding by March 15, between March and the end of April, because money does shift around, especially as producers find out that they've been selected for funding. Some folks realize, oh, actually this doesn't work for me. So that money then gets back into the pool and gets back into play, and someone else might get funded. So if you don't hear back from us on March 15, just know that we are still making selections likely until April. Okay, so here are some tips to ensure a successful application. If the land is not owned by an individual or an entity. For example, if it's owned by a trust and operated by an individual or operated by an entity, we do need a lease agreement, and we need that lease agreement to show that the lessor has at least 5 years of control of that land. We need the same name of the individual or the entity on all of our documents. It can't be different. We do need the same address across all of our forms, and all of our forms do require a wet signature. So this is a signature with a pen and a wet date. Again, a signature, or excuse me, a date with a pen as well. And we also need a voided check for your direct deposit information. So to ensure we do this correctly, again, I highly recommend make an appointment with us so we can give you the time you need to help you fill out all these forms, get it done all at once, and so then you don't have to worry about making the corrections later on. All right, and so our application deadline is less than a month away. And so all of our applications do need to be in before November 15th to be considered for this year for funding. If they're after November 15, we will look at them next fiscal year, which starts October 2025. So again, November 15, 2025 to be considered for this year of funding. We'll be making selections on in March 2025, and then contracting will be between April and August 2025. What contracting means is that you were selected for funding. We develop a plan and a contract for you. You sign that contract, and then you can get started with your practice. You cannot get started with your practice until you have a contract with NRCS. I'm gonna repeat that again. You cannot start any of the conservation practices until you have a contract with us, until you've signed a contract with NRCS. Only then will we be able to issue you that reimbursement and that cost share for these practices. So again, this is the timeline for this year of funding. So this is about a little less than a year in the future. So just keep in mind this timeline when you're thinking about when to implement certain practices on your farm. Okay, and so this is the address for the field office. This is the general line, and here's my information below. Please reach out if you have any questions about the process or to set up an appointment. Again, cannot recommend highly enough that you set up an appointment so we can get all these forms filled in and you can ask all your questions in person, and we can get everything taken care of.
Thank you, Michael. We are so blessed by our partnership with NRCS, and Michael for the last 3 years has been so willing, along with his team, to answer all of the questions we have about MAGS's specific funding. We worked with the NRCS team to create an application guide, and so we just want to thank you, Michael, for that great presentation and your partnership over the last few years of this funding period. As a reminder, as Michael said, the first thing that growers have to do in order to be eligible for funding is to get into the Farm Service Agency, and that can take a little bit of time. So we cannot urge you enough to make sure that you are in the FSA now. And if you have questions or just would like to look at a print material to guide you through the application process, we have an application guide on the MAGSA website at mcmullenarea.org/equip. And then finally, on November 6th, this is actually before MAGS's next board meeting at the Crewman Community Center from about 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m., we will be having an application drop-off event. So this means that if you have questions about your application, or maybe you've already made your appointment with NRCS, you filled it out, but you just want to verify a few things, we'd strongly encourage you to come November 6th from 12 to 1:30 p.m. Just drop in. We'll be at the Crewman Community Center, and soil conservationists and NRCS will be there to answer questions you have to make sure that you've got all the correct documents and have filled out your application correctly. So you can RSVP for this application drop-off event at mcmullenarea.org/equip. EQIP. Okay, with all of that, we wanted to make plenty of time for you to ask questions now. If you have any questions about this process, about EQIP, about NRCS and how to get in contact with them, now is your time. We've got plenty of time, so I'm going to open up the Q&A period. And again, you can submit your questions through the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, or you can raise your hand and I will unmute you so that you can share your question verbally. Okay, our first question is, what are the current conservation practices that NRCS is offering under EQIP?
Yeah, so there are quite a few practices for WaterSmart in particular, which is what this grant is for. It is water conservation practices, which typically includes new or replacement drip systems, connecting to surface water through pipeline or to replace leaking pipeline, flow meters with telemetry, soil moisture sensor with telemetry, but also includes things like cover crop. So if you're interested in cover cropping, that is also a practice that is included in this grant, as well as reservoirs and trying to think, and as also certain types of pumps, such as variable frequency drives or booster pumps. But again, we do not fund ag well pumps. If you, it's best also to kind of come in and tell us about your operation and certain things that you're interested in, so we can see if there are additional practices that fit within WaterSmart, or if you'd be better suited for something outside of WaterSmart, like compost or integrated pest management, or and any number of our additional practices that are in EQIP but are outside of this particular WaterSmart grant.
Thank you, Michael. Crystal asks, clarification on the application deadline. Is it November 15th, 2024 or 2025?
I apologize for that. It's November 15, 2024. It is this November. It's November 15 this year. I realize now on the slide it did say 2025. It's November 15, 2024 to get your application in to be considered for funding for this year. If you are selected for funding in March, we'll be developing a contract for you between April and August. Once you have a contract, then you are able to get started with your practice. So what that means is, let's say you get a contract in August 2025 for a drip system. You have 1 year from August 2025 to 2026 to get that drip system installed.
Yes, November 15th, 2024 is the deadline this year. Someone asks, is Kings River District different to apply? So are there different application guidelines for someone in Kings River District?
I'm not too familiar with the Kings River District. I don't believe there are any different application guidelines. I do know that this only serves growers in the MAGSA irrigation district. I'm not sure if the Kings District is a separate irrigation district or if it's or if referring to something different, but this program just serves growers in the MAGSA irrigation district.
Crystal has a question about the AGI requirements. Is the AGI requirement for the farming entity or the owner of the property in the case of leases?
AGI requirements are for the entity as well as every individual that makes up that entity. So if you are registering an entity with FSA, then they need to know how that entity is essentially is made up. And so they need to know how many owners there are of that entity and what percentage they own. And whatever information you provide to FSA in terms of how many people there are let's say there's 3 people that make up that entity and everyone owns around 33.33%, then we need an AGI from the entity as well as those 3 individuals. So that'd be 4 total AGIs. Once more, an AGI for the entity and an AGI for each individual that makes up that entity.
What is the AGI limit, Dorothy asks?
Yes, so the AGI limit is if your adjusted gross income has exceeded $900,000 for the last 3 years. So for this year, it's going to be looking at 2024, 2023, and 2022. So within those last 3 years, has the gross adjusted income for those last 3 years exceeded $900,000? If it does exceed $900,000, then unfortunately you were not eligible to participate in the NRCS program at this time. However, if in other subsequent years, if those 3 years do not exceed $900,000, then you are eligible for our program. This is not a determination that we make in the office. This form is sent to the IRS where they make this determination. So that is where the decision eventually comes from. We don't request any tax documents or anything like that. You simply complete the form, again, for the entity and each individual. And again, it's sent to the IRS to verify. I would like to actually add on something to that. If there is going to be, we haven't received the new AGI forms. So if there might be a change that I'm unaware of at this time, but for the past, as long as I can remember, it's been $900,000 cap limit. So it might be different this year, but I'm betting that it's going to be $900,000 again for, that you can't have exceeded for the last 3 years.
And Michael, just to clarify, it's for each year on average over the last 3 years. Is that correct?
Yes. So they, in my understanding of it, they look at the average of the last 3 years, and if it's exceeded $900,000, then that entity is ineligible. If it has not exceeded $900,000, then they are eligible.
And someone asked, will this presentation be available to rewatch at a later time? And yes, it will be. We're recording it right now and we'll post it to our YouTube channel, our website, and send it out via email. So if you registered for the event or you're on MAGSA's interested persons email list, you'll get an email with this recording, or you can visit our YouTube channel and it should be up by early next week. And someone asks, are there any restrictions on make or model of VFDs and flow meters?
So for the VFDs, we're going to need a couple documents. We're going to need a pump test of the current well that you have. And you do need to submit a quote for the make and model that you are interested in, because we do pay based on a horsepower. We pay based on horsepower. And so while I don't know any specifics at this time, that quote is needed for an engineer to make that determination. They're going to review that quote and see if it meets our standards. But I don't know of any restrictions, specific restrictions at this time.
I can add to the flow meters. If you're getting the meter for MAGSA, landowner, then we do have some regulations that apply. They have to be electromagnetic and telemetry enabled. There are 2 possibilities within Symmetrics that has a flange and a saddle type. Micrometer also has 2 models that qualify, and then there's a third one, a Vermont, that qualifies. The irrigation dealers that are working with us on our meter and telemetry rebate program are very familiar with those requirements and the meters that will accomplish that. And you can also call our office if you're not maybe working with an irrigation dealer is familiar with our program, and we can help you with identifying the proper flow meter that will meet the requirements of our regulations.
And Crystal, do you want to remind folks also about the deadline for meter and telemetry in MAGSA?
Sure, because there'll be a postcard coming in the mail that will have it in big bold letters. But if you happen not see that in your mail here in the next couple of weeks, we do have the approaching deadline where you need to have your meters and telemetry installed by January 31st of 2025. And hopefully you're all familiar with the fact that we do have a rebate program in addition to this program where you can get funded, although that's, as you probably have been aware now, realize that the deadline is after our installation deadline requirement, but we do have also a meter and telemetry rebate program that we are working with right now that will allow you to get some funding back for the installation and purchase of those equipments.
So we bring that up just to say that there are a lot of other conservation practices that you can get funding for through EQIP outside of meters and telemetry, because we are requiring that growers meet that January 31st installation deadline, which might be almost impossible. Michael, unless you have other thoughts on that, but almost impossible to do under this current timeline. And so just wanted to provide that clarification that the reason why we are still asking growers to learn more about EQIP is that there are many, many other practices that will be beneficial for our region and for your farming operations outside of meter and telemetry as well. Michael, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, can you actually repeat what you said about not having enough time to submit something? I didn't catch that part.
Just that MAGSA has a deadline of January 31st, 2025 for growers to have their meter and telemetry installed. And so if growers have not gotten funding for meter and telemetry in previous EQIP funding cycles, that applying this year may be impossible for them to meet MAGSA's installation deadline. That makes sense?
That is correct. Yes, that is correct. We would not have even made our funding selections at that time. And thank you. That's a good reminder. Again, I'm really harping on this. You cannot start your practice until you have a signed contract with us. Again, at that time and at that January time, you're not going to have a signed contract. You're not even going to know if you've been selected if you are doing the NRCS application process. Selections happen in March 2025, and then we'll be making the contracts between April and August 2025. That is the earliest that you're going to be able to start after you sign a contract with NRCS.
As a reminder, if you would like to get help with your application, we will be having that drop-off event on November 6th from 12 to 1:30 at the Kerman Community Center before the MAGSA board meeting that day. I would encourage you to look through the application guide we have on our website at mcmillanarea.org/equip and reach out to NRCS beforehand because the deadline is November 15th. So if you can come to that event on November 6th with some of your materials filled out and you can just ask some final questions at that event, that would probably be ideal. Michael, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, we can also help you fill out the application materials at that event. That's not a problem. We are going to try to have FSA there as well, and the importance of that is we need to know how you're registered with FSA so that we can fill out all of your application forms correctly. So either, please make sure that you are registered with FSA and that you know how you are registered with FSA in terms of if you're registered as an individual or an entity like an LLC or general partnership or a trust, because we do need that information to complete your application correctly.
All right, I'm gonna put up this contact information onto the screen one more time. But don't worry, again, all of these materials will be available on the MAGSA website. Be sure to sign up for MAGSA's email updates by going to mcmullenarea.org/email to make sure that you will get all of this sent directly to your email inbox. But I'll give about 1 to 2 more minutes for folks to submit questions, because I know sometimes it just takes a moment for those questions to formulate. Okay, someone asked, what would constitute an applicant not getting approved? If I have a need for VFDs and flow meters, why wouldn't they want to approve my application? So what would constitute an applicant not getting approved?
Yeah, so there could be several things happening if you were not selected for funding. One would be that it was a very competitive year and other people ranked higher than you did, and that you would not be selected for funding based on the practices that are needed on your farm. An additional reason would be you are not set up correctly with FSA in time for us to develop that contract for you. Another one would be if you do not have your quote for the flow meter and VFD and pump test for the VFD. We do need those documents in order for you to have an eligible contract with us. We need our engineer to be able to review those documents and determine that the flow meter as well as the VFD that you're interested in meet NRCS requirements. Another reason that you might not get approved is if the AGI, if you exceed the AGI limit, that is, again, determined by the IRS. We do not make that determination here. And those are the main reasons why you would not be able to move forward with a contract if you were selected for funding. So again, if you're selected for funding, we absolutely need all those documents, quotes, as well as pump tests to move forward with that contract. And FSA, everything with FSA needs to be clear. We need to know exactly what land you own and who owns it and who is leasing it. And it needs to be consistent with what the information that you put on the applications. If you don't do that, unfortunately, we could not move forward with the contract.
Thank you, Michael. Someone also asks, is it better to increase my chances by having multiple smaller, cheaper projects to increase chances of getting approved?
So the money doesn't really impact your opportunity for getting selected for funding. What improves your opportunity for getting selected for funding is the amount of resource concerns you're addressing, which does mean multiple practices. However, if you do have bigger ticket items like replacing a drip system, and also you have some smaller items like adding a flow meter with telemetry and a soil moisture sensor, those are, a big practice with 2 smaller ones. That's still really competitive. I would say the more practices you're interested in, the higher likelihood that you will be getting selected for funding. I will also say this, I hope I don't regret saying it, folks who have applied for only a flow meter are still getting selected for funding. So just don't, even if you only need a flow meter, I highly recommend applying. That's the kind of the beauty of this type of grant, is that since it is locked into a geographic location, essentially that being the McMullen Irrigation District, or MAGSA, you are not competing for these funds with the entire state of California. There's a much smaller pool of people who are eligible. And so what that means is if you only need 1 or 2 practices, there's a much higher likelihood of you getting selected for funding. And again, I've seen people getting selected for funding for only 1 practice, only that flow meter with telemetry, only that soil moisture sensor with telemetry. So, I would say, don't try to get into things you don't need, or, extend yourself financially. There's a pretty good likelihood that you will be selected for funding based on the practices that make sense to you at this time.
Thank you, Michael. It was previously stated that well pumps are not eligible. Is that correct? Crystal asks.
That is correct. Yeah, ag well pumps are not eligible. They're simply just not a practice that NRCS offers.
Another attendee asks, is real-time echo sounding well monitoring an option that will increase my chances of getting approved?
That is not a practice that we offer as well. It does sound useful though. That is a practice that I would recommend bringing up to our engineer to see if it can be funded in the future. But unfortunately, we do not offer that practice at this time.
One thing I will say I've really appreciated about our partnership with NRCS is that when conversations like this are brought up or practices like what was just mentioned are proven to be useful, that NRCS is very willing to have conversations with us about how maybe they could consider changing things in future years. So please, Magsa growers, if you have feedback or thoughts, please talk to NRCS, talk to us, and we're really thankful for Michael, your guys' willingness to have those conversations for future opportunities. Someone asks, if I currently have an old flow meter that doesn't work, can I apply for an upgrade?
Yeah, if the flow meter is non-functional and I believe it's over 10 years old, we may be able to replace it. So again, if it's non-functional, over 10 years old, and also if it does not have telemetry, we will highly likely be able to replace it. That final determination is made by our engineer, which is why I'm not giving 100% of a yes. But if it is not functioning, if it is broken, over 10 years old, we should be able to replace it.
So just to reiterate, Michael, as you mentioned already, once a grower submits their application, there will be some sort of site visit where someone from NRCS will come and evaluate the situation on a grower's field, correct?
That is correct. Yeah, we need to know where specifically the practices are going to be implemented. So where is this flow meter going? Where is the soil moisture sensor going? Where is the pipeline going? Our engineer will be conducting those site visits. A soil conservationist may or may not accompany that engineer at the time, but those will be done, as well as photos will be taken of the sites where the practice will be going.
And then it will be after that then you will determine whether or not the grower is eligible for funding, correct?
Yes. So it is the site visit as well as the quote and any other documents needed, such as like a pump test or design, that our engineer reviews to make sure that it meets our standards. Typically, if it doesn't meet our standards, we don't deny it right there. We say, hey, can you find a different brand or do a little design change so that it can meet our standards so that you can be eligible for funding.
If there are no final questions, again, you see the contact information here on the screen. You can always send an email or make a phone call if a question comes to you after this webinar, and we hope to see you on November 6th at that drop-off event. Again, there's an application guide, a pretty thorough PDF on our website that will walk you through all the steps that we talked about in today's webinar. So please check out those resources. Thank you all for your time. Thank you again, Michael, so much for making time to talk with us today. Thank you, Crystal. And I'm going to officially close up this webinar. Thank you all and have a great day.